thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
I'm Julie Tenner, and today we're joined by Bree Downes, who's one of my dearest friends, who I've travelled so much of parenting, and we've worked together as doulas to support women, and we also had a business together, Mama Bake, where we taught additive-free cake decorating classes. So we've had quite a journey together, and we've got Bree here today because she has just the most extraordinary wisdom to share with us around what is coined as love bombing, and I would love Bree to give us some background. So Bree, what is love bombing, and how did you come to deciding it was something you were going to do?
Firstly, hi ladies. Thank you for having me.
It's a delight.
I remember a long time ago reading an article, I think one of those infamous Facebook articles that pop up in your feed. It just grabbed my attention, and it was an article about love bombing. And I read it and I remember thinking, because we already did, I've got 3 young children, and my husband and I, for the last few years, have made a point of having what we call special time.
Yeah.
Which is where one of us will go out with just one child and do something really special just for them. And that's their time. And generally, because our lives are so busy, it's usually just a morning or an afternoon.
And why do you prioritise that? How did you even come to choosing to do that?
We could just see the dynamic between our 3 kids of one or more of them always feeling left out, always feeling like things weren't exactly how they wanted them to be. I could see there was this constant flexibility that the 3 of them were needing to
and almost
deal
conflict.
with.
Do you know this conflict
and it raised conflict between them all, because all of them all the time felt like they were never fully getting their way.
Yes.
And I know that there are gifts and there is beauty in having siblings, in learning that is just the way that the world is. But I also think on the flip side of that, there also needs to be times where you do get everything your way and you do get everything you want.
And why do you think that that's important? What do you see as the gifts out of that?
Happiness. It just makes them happy, and it makes them feel fulfilled, and it makes them feel valued and important.
I just love this concept because it's actually saying to your child what you care about and what is important to you matters.
Yes.
And I'm here to fill your cup.
Yes.
And say that I celebrate you for who you are.
Absolutely.
Which is so beautiful.
Even though the rest of the week you've got to fit in.
Yeah, that's right. But it's kind of saying to your child, I see you.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's
saying to you,
really
I
is
see
that
you.
I see you. And
so this love bombing article that you'd read.
Yeah, so the love bombing actually is, it's a bit more specific than just having special time, which we're doing. So it's saying that it needs to be a minimum of 24 hours, can be 48 hours or more, but a minimum of 24 hours. And in that 24 hours, so you either need, whichever parent chooses to take the child, you either need to go away from the home and stay somewhere else with that child, or you need to ask your partner and the other children to go away somewhere so you've got the house to yourself. So in our case, we ended up going into the city and staying at a hotel for the weekend.
So this came about because you both share a birthday.
Yes.
Which is pretty special anyway.
It is very special.
And the gift from your mum was?
Yeah, my mother-in-law actually and my father-in-law gave my son and I tickets to go see The Lion King in the city, which was amazing. So we already had tickets for that. And then after we were given those tickets, I then thought maybe we should make a whole weekend out of it. And then I went, we'll have a love bombing weekend, because it's the first time I've actually had the space and the opportunity to make a whole weekend out of this and devoting it to really love bombing my son. And we've had a bit of a rocky year with him. He's 9.5, and there's lots of shifts and changes and hormones and big feelings
9
going
is
on
big.
for him. Yeah. So he has had a really hard year, and I felt him stepping away. I felt him change, and I can really see he's starting to turn into that young man, and he's really lost that boyhood. It's almost like he's in a transition phase at the moment, and I can feel it's been really hard for him, and it's been hard for me too because he's my first. This is the first time I've walked these waters, so I feel like I don't even know what I'm doing.
And I
with
guess
him.
for you, it's also bringing out stuff for you around a process of letting go.
Yeah,
perhaps
totally.
to that first baby and that dependency.
Yep.
And Steiner even call 9 the crossing.
Yes.
Don't they?
Yep,
yeah.
they do.
And they have
do.
this whole philosophy around, even tribally, at around that age, boys would have gone off with the men on some sort of experience. So there is something that I think we generally don't talk about at 9 that is really kind of happening and awakening in those little bodies, particularly in boys.
Yep.
So you've had this son who you've noticed shifts in, you've noticed a bit of disconnection in, you've noticed maybe some behaviours that have come out of that you're not too sure how to access or to help.
Yep, absolutely.
And so you chose to do this love bombing weekend.
Yeah,
so tell us what you did.
So we went, I'd booked, I said to him, how about we stay in the city for the weekend when we go to see the Lion King? And he was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And I said, so do you want to stay like at a bit of a fancy hotel or something? And he goes, oh, Mum, I would love to stay at a hotel with a pool on the roof. And I was like, okay, cool. It starts here, with his request.
Yeah.
So, of course, I had to get online and then try and find a hotel
With a pool on the roof.
that was affordable, that had a pool on the roof. So,
Which you did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I totally did. And I booked it, and then the leading up to it, I was really excited. And I think after having spoken to a few friends this week too, a few people have mentioned, oh God, but that costs a lot of money to do that. Some people can't afford to go and stay at a fancy hotel, and how do you do that without spending so much money? And I guess for us, we didn't have to pay for the Lion King tickets because they were gifted. I did invest in the hotel. I got a cheap deal. And then all the activities that we did on the weekend, I researched before we went. I worked out what was on in the city. I know what my son's into. So I knew all the things that he'd be interested in doing, and I just weeded out the ones that I couldn't afford. There was lots of workshops and amazing things we could have done, but they were hundreds of dollars. So I made up a short list of all the cool things that we
you
could
literally
do.
printed?
Yeah. That were free or cheap and were affordable. And I had like 15 things on my list. So there was plenty of options. And then, so we headed in on the Saturday morning. And in the car on the way to the hotel, I gave him the list of all the things that we could do. And he just sat there for about 10 minutes reading through the list and looking out the window and thinking. And I could just see that he was
so
just
beautiful.
in his own mind, just working out, what do I actually want to do this weekend? And then he went down the list and he was like, I reckon we should do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, awesome, cool. And that will flow really beautifully. So we got to the hotel and we checked in. It was around lunchtime and we hadn't had lunch. So the first thing we needed to do was go and eat. So we went to this cool place called the Trailer Park Caravan something. I don't know, some burger place in the city, Trailer Park something. And we had burgers and Kinder Surprise milkshakes and chips.
So your
and
whole
the
what I loved when you told this story to me was you were saying your whole idea was anything you put on that list was anything you were going to say yes to.
Yep.
So your concept of love bombing was a weekend or a day or whatever it is you choose to do of yes.
Yep.
So there's no no's.
That's right.
It's just yes to everything.
Yep.
So you were very careful in that yes to only put things that you wanted to say yes to.
That's
is that
right.
right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really love when you were telling me the story too, that you were saying in all of the restaurants and things we went to, I was so expecting that he was going to choose McDonald's and he was going to choose da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
And instead, what ended up happening?
Well, he ended up, every time it was time to choose what we were going to do next, I just put it back onto him and I was just like, what do you want to do now? What do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? And I really just let him control the whole process. So everything was chosen by him. And it was amazing how many times he actually came back and said, I don't know, Mum, what do you want to do? Let's go do something you want to do. And it was nice to hear him even have that thought process of, oh, there is someone else here with me and they might want to do something too. So it was quite thoughtful for him, which is it's not a common way that he is, being my firstborn. It's always usually all about him. So it was nice to see that generosity coming out in him too, and that thoughtfulness of, actually there is someone else involved in this and they might want to do something too. And I bet whenever he offered for us to go and do something I wanted, I was just like, no mate, this weekend's all about you. I want you to choose. So he chose. We went and had, these delicious, yummy, healthy burgers. Well, probably healthier than McDonald's anyway, for lunch. And then after that, he wanted to go spend some birthday money that he still hadn't spent. And again, it was big. It was great for me because I noticed how controlling I can be too sometimes. So even around his own birthday money, I had limits on what I would and wouldn't let him spend it on. I noticed that coming up for me because, of course, he wanted to go to EB Games and buy an Xbox game.
Yeah.
And I've got such a reaction about all the screen time that my kids have, and everything's all about the Xbox at the moment. So I had this really big blockage around letting him spend his birthday money on another Xbox game. And I just had to go, no, let it go. It's his birthday money. This is a weekend of yes. I can't now control or manipulate how he goes and spends his money. So we went off to EB Games, and he ended up not actually buying a game there. They had all this paraphernalia and stuff, so he bought all these other bits and pieces which he was really happy with. But then on the top level of EB Games, it's like a 4-level store, they've got this whole room where you can go and just sit down and play Game Boys and Nintendo Wii and all this stuff. So we went up there and we played Zelda for about an hour
Just the
together,
two of you.
just the two of us. So that was... It was hard because, here I was thinking we're going to have this weekend away from screens, and it will be so nice to see who my son is and how he behaves when there's no screens involved. And within 2 hours of us being in the city, I find myself in front of these screens. But it's just, for me, I just had to go, this is what he loves.
And it's a beautiful way of him teaching you to what's important to him, and you having to go through that process of letting go on how you think it should be and how you think he should be. Because I think we're so conditioned to that whole idea of screen times and they're bad, and this societal thing of violent video games, blah, blah, blah. But our children are still individual people capable of making good choices. And, some parents might be listening to this going, oh my gosh, but you give an inch, they take a mile. But in fact, you're demonstrating that, in fact, he's still, even though you're giving him everything, he was still exercising that.
He was putting his own boundaries
He was putting them in for himself.
And I saw those boundaries come up the whole weekend. For instance, when we went out for dinner on the Saturday night, he chose to go to Chinatown and he ordered noodles and a side plate of stir-fried veggies. I never ever would have thought that my son would actually, if I'd given the choice of what we were going to eat, I never would have guessed or thought that he would order food like that.
It's a really interesting dynamic too, because so often in the parent-child relationship, there's the sort of parent who's trying to overpower. So the hierarchy, and so the child will always be looking for ways to challenge that. And so because you dropped those boundaries, really, he was able to exercise his choice without having to bring in that challenge to you, and perhaps
that resistance.
Yeah, he didn't have to resist something that he thought, or something that you were telling him to do. He was able to make a choice free of that, which is an amazing learning experience for him to have.
And how I also hear that you're saying in that you are also bearing witness to your internal struggles or your internal control patterns.
Absolutely.
And so how are you actually dealing with those while still managing to be present and loving and all of that?
Do you know what helped, and do you know what was key for me? Was for me to keep dropping back into my inner child.
How did you do that? Tell us about that.
Well, I just kept going. If I was a child and I was having this experience right now, how would I be feeling? And I just felt overwhelmed with love and care. And I just kept thinking, if that's what I'm providing for him right now, is that feeling, then that's awesome, and that's the kind of mothering that I want to do.
That's the feeling you want him to take out of his childhood.
Absolutely. And it's not all about spoiling the child for the weekend or letting them get their way. It's just about them feeling heard, and also letting him, like, for example, going back to when we went out for dinner, letting him get in touch and have the ability to go, actually, what do I want? Because when I dictate all the time to
what
him,
do I want?
Yes. How often do our children actually get the chance to say, do I want? What does my body feel like?
That's clever.
Because, my kids don't get a choice on what they eat for dinner during the week, because it's just what I have the energy to cook and what I've got in the fridge, So how often do our kids actually get to tune into their stomachs and their bodies and go, what does my body want?
Oh, I love that, because that's such another tool. We talk so much about intuition and how do we teach our children to sit so much into their bodies and their feelings and their centres of intuition to know how to navigate their lives. And that's the perfect tool, is what do you want is an easy question that allows them to slip in and check inwardly, which is intuition. Yeah.
And that's the thing, it's a perfect timing to start doing activities like this, because generally intuition can often drop off a lot of kids by the age of sort of 7, 8, 9. And so by you, I guess these kinds of things we could all do as parents occasionally to really give ourselves to our children and give them that that choice, you know, flip the kind of relationship on its head, which is because children are so often, and we don't even realise it because we operate from an unconscious space so much, to parent by control. Even if we are trying to be quite aware with it, we'll still slip back into the control. So by flipping that and giving them the control, it's just so empowering for them and for us to see them reflecting back to us all of our own stuff that we struggle with.
It's amazing. So you've done lunch, EB games, and then dinner?
Let me think. What else did we do? Oh, that's right. We went back to the hotel. He went and spent some money at EB Games. Then we went clothes shopping, and I let him pick out his own clothes, because for how many years I buy my son the clothes that I like, and a lot of the time he doesn't like them and he ends up not wearing them, and they just sit in his cupboard, and then I get just angry because I've spent money on clothes that are just sitting in his cupboard. So we went to Myers and he bought himself some clothes, and I let him pick them out himself. And it's just being able to, I feel like for me it's a process of letting go a little bit too, and also guiding him to become an adult at some point.
A bit of self-sufficiency.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like I'm teaching him life skills. And then we were both so exhausted after that. He said to me, so we went back to the hotel. He said, can we go back to the hotel? I'm feeling really tired. So we went back to the hotel, and it was about 3:30. And he decided that night that he wanted to go see Ant-Man at the movies, which we'd booked tickets for, but the only session was 9 o'clock. And he normally goes to bed at 7:38. So we were sitting on the bed in the hotel, and he goes, so it's 3:30. What time's the movie, Mum? And I said 9. He goes, wow. And he's adding up how many hours away that was. And he's like, I'm really tired. How am I going to stay awake for the movie? I said, oh, I don't know. I said, you don't think you can stay awake? He goes, I know, let's have a nap. Who would have thought my 9-year-old son was going to ask for a nap?
That is so cool.
So we snuggled up in bed and we had a nap.
Which even that is beautiful.
Yeah, it was
that's
lovely.
Connection. He's obviously had so much connection time with you that he's now ready to embrace that physical connection, because that can be such a resistance for boys as they get older, isn't it?
Yeah.
I often find even with my son that you can't reach that point of physical connection until you've had a bit of fun time connection.
Yeah, it's not as instant as when they're little at all, and I really noticed that with him over the whole weekend. Even, you know, after our nap, we went and had dinner in Chinatown, and then from there we walked down to Crown Casino. And I kept reaching down for his hand, which he would grab my hand. And this was, I think for me, this was the biggest thing I got out of the weekend, was that when he put his hand in mine when we were walking along, I noticed how different his hand felt. It was bigger and it was wider. And when he held my hand back, he didn't hold it with that grasp and that trust and, or not trust, what's the word?
Dependency.
Yeah, the dependency that he did when he was a little boy. And so it was, you know, it wasn't very firm. It was a little bit limp and it was cold and it was a little bit awkward. And it just, for me, it really brought home, wow, my son's growing up and he is stepping away, but that's okay. And it's about finding
connection in other ways.
Yeah, because up until this point, it's been, you know, we can have a cuddle on the couch or share a joke, and that's been connection for us. And whereas now, not so much anymore.
It's like, I'm tearing up here because I've got a 2.5-year-old and I always hold his hand, you know. But the thing is, for you, it's recognising that changing form, isn't it? It's changing to another form, and it's about letting go of that.
Yeah.
We were all crying.
Yeah. It was a really sad moment for me, because it was the moment where I'm like, wow, you don't want to hold your mum's hand. Like, I could feel he was a little bit embarrassed and it felt awkward for him, and that made me feel really sad. But it also made me feel like, okay, well, my job is to parent this young man now and to keep him as connected to himself and to the world as possible.
Oh, that's the biggest gift, to keep them connected to themselves.
Yeah.
Especially in a world that's trying to disconnect them so much. There's so much out there that's vying for their attention. You know, this setting aside a weekend like that to have that intention to give them what they love and in turn gets them to look inward and ask themselves these questions
What
that
a gift.
they don't often ask. They're not often given space to ask, or even given, in their mind, permission to be able to ask themselves these things, because they're so often having to subordinate to somebody else around them, because that's how children are conditioned, really.
And that's how our society functions too.
Yeah.
So then you went to the movies.
So we went to the movies and we get to the candy bar and I can feel myself going, oh crap, what's about to unfold here?
Oh no, you really set yourself up there.
You can have anything.
And it was literally that conversation. I said, all right, what are we getting? Like, and I inside I was like, Bree, if he asks for Coke, you've just got to say yes.
Oh man, that challenges me so much.
I'm bracing myself. And you know what the little sweetheart did? He said, oh, I'm not that hungry, Mum. I'm still full from dinner. I think I just want a bottle of water.
Isn't that outrageous?
I didn't even think I could exercise that restraint.
I know. And I'm standing there going, oh, but hang on a minute. I want to get something if my son's just getting water.
But how tuned in to his body must he be
I know.
to make that call?
I know. I know. And that's a beautiful gift for me, because I feel like in that moment, he's more tuned in than me, because
Yes.
I'm so conditioned to see the candy bar at the movies and go, oh, I want popcorn and I want Maltesers and I want Lift and I want all this stuff. And then my beautiful son goes, I just want a bottle of water. And that makes me go, actually, what do I feel like?
Am I
Actually,
numbing or
I
am
don't feel like anything either.
Yes. Yes, it's a big call, isn't
Yeah.
it? What a massive mirror that is,
Yep.
isn't it?
Yep. So there was so many gifts I got out of the weekend. And I mean,
And then you went back to the hotel, had a beautiful night's sleep.
I wouldn't say beautiful. You know, the city, it's a bit noisy.
Yeah.
It was okay.
And then you got up the next morning.
We got up the next morning and we went down for buffet breakfast at the hotel, and that again, you know,
It's just
like,
fun.
Yeah, you know, whatever pancakes, bacon, eggs, toast, pastries, cereal, the works, you know. So yeah, we had 3 breakfasts and
Gorgeous.
it was funny because his little brother quite loves food, and we were sitting there and he goes, how much would Reefy love this buffet? Yeah, totally get into it. So then we went to the National Gallery of Victoria, and they've got this great little exhibition on at the moment for kids where they get to go in and make a stop motion movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I highly recommend checking it out. So we went in there and he made a dinosaur stop motion movie for about an hour and a half. And then we went and just had a hot chocolate and went to the Lion King, which was just absolutely incredible. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And then after that we went home. And I think the gift of the weekend didn't actually come out until the Monday night. So he'd been at school all day Monday. You know, I don't know about you, when there's something bothering my kids or something that's not quite right, I know. And I felt for the whole year that something has not been quite right with him. And I think because it's been going on so long, it had gotten to the point where I've just put it down to, oh, well, he's growing up and he's changing and maybe this is just who he is. We've been doing this beautiful thing at dinner time called the key jar. And it's basically a jar that you make and you print off these questions. And there's 48 questions and you cut them up and put them in the jar. And then each night at dinner time, you pull out one question and it's the topic of conversation over dinner.
Which I love anyway,
That's
doing
so
that.
great.
I know.
Well, we ended up doing it because I got sick of just arguing with the kids at dinner time, you know, sit up straight, eat your vegetables. I got sick of that conversation.
Yeah.
So I thought I'm going to introduce something else. So we've given the key jar a try and it's been really, really great. And although a lot of the questions are probably a little bit too old for my kids, there's still some in there that get them thinking. And it also stops us arguing at dinner time. Which
Can you
is
give
the
us
whole
some
point.
examples of some of the questions?
So some of them are, name one thing you love about yourself. Or who in your class seems sad. Or what's one thing you could do to change the world? So they're questions like that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
aren't they?
They're really
So Monday
beautiful
night you're all
questions.
sitting around and you pull
So
a
we're
question
sitting,
out.
yeah, I pull a question out and the question is, what are you afraid of? And we've been talking all year about moving house because we've outgrown our house and it's time for new adventures for our family. And we all went around and talked about what we were afraid of. And then my beautiful little son, he's sitting across from me and I could see he was choking up. And he looks at me and I could see he's then welling up. And he goes, I'm afraid of moving house. And I just got goosebumps. And I just went, there it is. That is what has been going on the whole year.
That he probably couldn't articulate.
I don't think he was even aware.
It took connection.
It took that weekend of connection for him to be able to access what was going on.
And the
him.
right question at the right time. There's no mistakes, is there?
And
Thank you, Keija Fairy.
For offering up that question.
I know. It was just the synchronicity of all of it, you know. But I really feel like if we hadn't have had that weekend, I don't know that would have come out.
That he could have accessed that.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then he came and he sat on my lap and he cried for 10 minutes.
So healing.
And I just held him. And then the beauty, and this is what I love about aware parenting, is not trying to talk him out of it, not trying to say, oh, but it's just a house and, you know, this and that and this and that. Just letting him actually cry and letting him actually really feel into the sadness of letting go of his first home. And then at the end of it, I said to him, do you know what? All the beautiful memories and experiences you've had in this house, all your parties, all the fun, all the sleepovers, you know, welcoming brothers and sisters into the house, everything you love about this house, no one can ever take that away from you. They're memories that will be in your head forever. I said, I still have beautiful memories from my first house, and, you know, we've got lots of adventures for our whole life, and we'll probably move house a few times, and then you'll move out of home and you'll move house a few times, but no one can take these memories from this house from you. They're with you forever as a gift. Excuse me. And I think just allowing him to have those feelings and to acknowledge them, I think completely flipped on the head. And then the next day on the way to school he's saying, right, so when are we selling the house and what do we need to do? And what can I do to help out?
It's just extraordinary.
And
That
it
is
was
just fantastic.
I can just see that's just completely a non-issue for him at all. And he's just been divine.
But he spent all year having
the whole year
disconnection and behaviour issues, and it took, oh my gosh, I think that's so powerful.
So that really allowed him to clear that emotional charge that was running him, really. It sounds like it had been running his behaviour because he had this fear.
Yep.
And that connection opened up the opportunity to create healing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so now you've had a week since that weekend.
Yeah.
Have you noticed him behaving differently, sitting differently? What have you noticed in him out of that time of connection?
I've noticed he seems more in his body. And
can you explain what that means?
so he just, it's hard to articulate because for me it's a feeling. I can feel him. I can sense him.
Like a groundedness.
He's grounded. He seems more present. He seems more connected in to himself. And look, there's been times where he's gotten frustrated and angry with his brother and sister. So all of, a lot of those behaviours have all continued on as per usual. But I can pull him up and say, hey, Zai, sweetie, it's time to practice being more tolerant right now, because that's something he's actually coined that he needs to work on, is being more tolerant. And instead of in the past he'd grunt at me, he'll look at me and he'll go, yep, okay. So he's more open. He's been more open this week to hearing me and
able to process tools in that process.
And I guess I can't assume too much about how the whole. I know he loved the weekend.
Did you, as a mother, feel more connected to your child?
Yes, this is what I was just about to say. Is I can make all these assumptions about what the weekend was for him and how it made him feel and blah blah blah, but at the end of the day, it helped me connect to him too, and that's been the biggest gift out of it as well. Is because I'd been feeling, and Julie, we talked about this during the week, and it's something that a lot of mothers don't talk about. I've been feeling hatred towards my child.
Yes, the point where you get there's so much disconnection and possibly so many inner child triggers that whatever they represent to you in that moment, they could walk in the room and bang, you're just on edge.
Yep.
They just annoyed you the minute they walked in the room.
Just their mere presence. You're just like, I just want you to go away.
Yeah.
And even having thoughts like,
we don't talk about that
very
much.
We don't talk about it at all because it's we feel ashamed to think that we might feel that way, but about our child. I've had thoughts like, man, if you weren't in our family, things would be so much smoother. And yes, real absolute feelings of hatred. So
which
for me,
really you're recognising as disconnection.
Yes.
Or as your unhealed inner child.
Yeah,
which you and I both talk about and do work on constantly.
Yeah.
So you were at that point, which I so get because I have been there with each of my children at various times. And this is the point that you got to and you recognised love bombing, perfect opportunity for me and for him.
Yep.
You had this weekend. And then how are you feeling on the other side of that weekend?
Well, I feel love bombed. I feel like I went with the intention and the purpose of love bombing him. And I wanted him, for me, the whole weekend was about him. But what I didn't expect was what I was going to get out of it. And I got what I put into that weekend and all the yeses I said to him, that all just came back to me.
You're saying yes to yourself
yes,
then, wasn't
absolutely. Because it was saying yes to me being the best mother in the world. To say yes to all that. Do you know what I mean? It was saying yes to being, a great mum. It was saying yes to letting go of control, which are all the things that I struggle with all the time. So here I was thinking I was saying yes to him, but I was also saying yes to me. And I absolutely came out of that weekend feeling love bombed myself.
And more connected to your child, back in love with your child.
Absolutely
Yes.
back in love with my child. And we've had, there's been several times this week where he's just crawled into my lap and we've just held each other, and it hasn't been an awkward, cold hug. It's been a warm, I don't want to let go, feeling the love flow and the energy flow between us and feeling our hearts connected hug, which I haven't had for a very long time with him.
This whole experience speaks to me as that a reflection of the reality that a parent-child relationship is not the parent teaching the child any more than the child teaching the parent.
No.
That him disconnecting from you, your perception was you disconnecting from him just as much.
Yeah.
That was
it's
that
a dance.
Yeah.
It's a total dance, and we're in it just as much as the other person. We really are.
Oh, Bree, I just loved it. And I so hope that all of our listeners have really had something that's resonated with them in this, because when Bree first told me this story, I said, Bree, that is just so powerful that we have to share that story.
I'm so glad that you shared it with Julie so that we can share it with everyone here, because that moved me so much.
Me as well.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy when we have more than one child. It's really easy to sort of lump them all together in the kids.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with the kids? What are we going to do for the kids? And anyone with more than one child will know you can't always please everyone. Even from cooking dinner at night, you might get two out of the three will enjoy dinner and the other one won't touch it. It's very hard to please all three at all times.
Yeah.
So you end up just doing...
Let alone yourself in that process.
Exactly. That doesn't even come into the
Exactly.
equation. So you end up just doing what's best for the family, or what's going to work for the family, or what's easiest for the family. So
as a collective.
That's right. So it's very, very rare that any one of those children get all their needs met and feel like it's exactly how they want it. So it's really important for my husband and I to give our children those experiences, because we just see them flourish and we see them feel really, really loved and held when they get that opportunity. And it can just be a few hours, and that is what we normally do.
And that flows out for them then, doesn't
totally.
it? Yeah, it changes their lives, the way that they function, possibly the peer groups that they have. Yeah.
But then it's funny because my daughter didn't cope very well with me having a weekend with my eldest. And so, of course, I've come home to her in a emotional mess. Yeah, when am I getting special time? Well, that's not fair for me. Why didn't I get to go to the Lion King? So... it gives her the opportunity to tap into, well, I feel left out, and then
those feelings,
yeah,
those shadow side feelings.
Absolutely. And then we've had lots of conversations this week about how, well, what about, you got this and he didn't get that. So, about none of you are more special than the other one. You're all equally special, and you all get special time in different ways and at different times. And yeah. So
and Bridget, I'm hearing this is almost your perfect polarity then, isn't it? Is you had this amazing experience, but also here's the flip side of it.
Because with every action, there's a reaction. So of course that was going to happen. And so it's you also preparing yourself and getting your reserves up to be able to deal with the fallout, but again, it's teaching, isn't it? It's teaching your daughter the realities of life, that she won't always get what her brother gets.
Exactly.
And there's tools in that.
Yeah.
Life tools in that. So, Bree, I'm wondering, is there a sentence, because I know how amazingly intuitive you are with women, is there a sentence about love bombing that you would like to speak to with these mums? We often end with we hope that you take into your week something, something, something. So the mums that have listened, or even the women in their own lives that have listened to this podcast about love bombing, what is the gift that you would really like them to carry into their next week?
Where can you say yes?
I love that. Bree, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an absolute gift.
Thank you for having me. I feel really honoured.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, there's just so much wisdom in that. Gosh. to our listeners, if you've got other parents or people in your life you think would benefit from hearing this podcast or any of our other podcasts, please share it with them. And also, if you're enjoying them, because we are getting lots of messages from people privately, we'd love you to rate us on iTunes to help us keep this going. And if you want to contact with us personally, I'm Bridget at suburbansandcastles.com, and if you're interested in coaching or soul sessions, we've got Julie at naturopathicbirth.com.au.
And yes, and we really want to remind you of our retreat that we have coming up in November. We've already got tickets being booked, which is incredibly exciting. And if you are really feeling called by any of the podcasts that we're talking about, it's an in-person opportunity to really spend time coaching-wise with Bridget and I to walk through your story and your journey as a woman, perhaps some of the disconnections that you've had along the way to yourself or your career or your children, or really what a large focus for us will be at some point was our inner sensuality and sexuality journey as the woman after the children. So if you're really wanting to go deeper from any of the podcasts, then the immersive retreat is really the place to come and really have a day out where you can journey yourself. And we would love you to join us with that. So please have a look at that on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/nourishingthemother. And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavour to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.